Hello, everybody. Let's see, if you've been watching this over the last several months now, you may have heard me mention about, getting ready to plant in the fall, which is a wonderful time to do it. And now we are in that time. November is December, January, February are actually excellent times to do a lot of planting here in the Southeast, as long as our soils are thawed out for the most part, which is most of the time. We very rarely have deep freezes here. You can get something in the ground. And we're out here at the perennial border, and there's some editing that I've been doing over the last several months. And now that we finally got some rain on Monday, on Halloween, we got 2 inches of rain here. I thought it was safe to actually stick some more plants in the garden because our soils were getting quite dry in this region. We had just had 2 light showers, more or less, aside from the hurricane, the first of the month on October 1st, the end of September and October 1st. So anyways, we're out here, and I have a few perennials set out, but this applies not just to perennials, herbaceous perennials. You can do your woodies now, and we'll get in some other stuff as well. But I have laid out a handful of things here, and the soil here in the border is wonderful. And yesterday when we were planning this, it was like, I don't want to go over there. That soil's not as easy to dig in. But right here, this border has been under cultivation now for over 40 years. And so the soil has been well amended, both using actual soil amendments and then just our continual mulching of the soils here. So really easy for us to get in here and do some editing and get some new plants in here that'll hopefully fill in. So first one I have down here, which you might think, oh, it's an empty pot. No, this isn't. This is a peony. This is actually a peony called lemon chiffon. It's a herbaceous peony. It's not even an Ito from what I can get, which the Itos are tree peonies crossed with herbaceous peonies. From what I understand, this is just a straight pastel yellow flowered herbaceous peony. It's a new one for us. We have not had this one in the garden yet, but I was doing some reading up on this one a little bit ago. And this is one that when it's young, until it becomes established, and peonies are a long-term plant, so you really have to let them get established. It'll often have flowers that are single for the first 2 or 3 years. And then you get really, once it gets really settled in there, you start getting really nice full double blossoms. So again, like I said, you might think my pot looks pretty empty here. I don't even know what's in here, but peonies can be planted just about any time of the year when they're container grown. But this is one we've had in the nursery and I've been needing to get in the ground. But you can also buy peonies at this time of the year, whether online or in your local nursery, bare root. This is a wonderful time to plant them. Get them, plant them now. Don't wait till spring unless they're in containers. Again, you can plant them anytime. But the bare root ones, this is the ideal time to get them in the ground. They love cold weather. They do not care about warm weather. So this will be perfectly happy, even though it is not established at all in the garden yet. But it will, and they actually don't like to be in containers that much, so it'll establish way better in the garden. So let's dump this out here and see what I have in here. I don't know. It's going to be a little bit of a mystery, but this has been in a 3-gallon pot, so it might have a fairly decent root system, but it might not. But the key thing is it has... Oh, I can see, starting to see the rhizomes here, or the very thick roots, and we have a really nice plant here. And I don't know if Lise can get it, but the ideal part is this bud right here. So that is the all-important thing on a peony, is it has a nice bud. And you don't have to plant these overly deep, especially here in the South. They appreciate being up where they can get chilled. And I'm gonna do a little bit, I've knocked the most of that soil off, but I'm gonna work this soil into the existing soil around here, this media that was in the pot. And we're gonna use it still. And I had, as you can see, our soil here is just terrible. You just all wish that you had this, right? Anyways, so I'll get us a new hole here. Our soil, like I said, has been amended over the years, and also with compost, which we put down, or mulch. So that's improved the soil so much over the years. I was told it used to be hard and dry in spots, or wet in other spots. Our border is pretty consistent here now, so after over 40 years of being in cultivation. So I'm gonna set this down in here, just with the eye, which is right over here, just below the soil level. Just barely peeking out. And this should be happy as a clam here. It will enjoy the fall and in winter in here, and it should sprout up this coming spring, and get maybe not any flowers this year. I don't overly anticipate that. It'll be a good year for it to settle in. Peonies are one of those plants that you have to be patient with. They're not going to be like annuals or some of the really fast growing things like salvias and stuff that give you almost instantaneous, full glorious big plants the first year. Peonies you want to plant and forget about them. They will take 2 to 5 years probably to get really well established and start to do their thing. They'll probably start flowering in its second year is my guess in here, and then from then on it'll just build from there. So that is one we're going to put in here in the ground, and that's probably one of the bigger plants. Let's see if we can get back in here. I have one setting back here. This is an Arboretum. This is a little bit late for planting it, I think, but I'm going to try it anyways. I have access to this one. This is a new Arboretum for us. I don't know if Lise can get the color on this. This is one we got from the Atlanta Botanic Garden, and I forget what it's called. It's Traffic Island, Arboretum Traffic Island. I planted one of these out on our street, along the street. So it's in the first year, it's gotten about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. I love Arboretums. They're very long flowering for us here in the southeast. They can literally flower as long as we're, depending on the cultivar, anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit and up. They are looking pretty good, decently for the most part. That is, the wood will stay fine. They'll have flowers into the low 20s with no problem. So they'll go from spring, or actually winter to fall. So you can almost have 4 seasons of them here. They'll even throw flowers out, like I said, in the winter. Some of the other cultivars we've had have flowered throughout the winter. So I haven't done any test digging out back in this area here, but we're going to see what happens when I put my shovel in the ground here. I don't expect too much of an issue unless I find something else that's growing here that's dormant, which is very possible. And I think I may have found some narcissus bulbs. I think I have, so I might shift this just a little bit to the side. There's, I believe, Narcissus actea in here, which is one of our later flowering daffodils. Let's see, am I hitting anything in here? Let's see what I'm getting here. I'm getting a root probably from my crepe myrtle, but that's not gonna be any major issue. So we're gonna find it down here. And we'll do a little bit of a root pruning with that. I'll get that out of the way. And I have one more here. Yeah, these are definitely crepe myrtle. I'll probably make some more crepe myrtles this way, as they will grow from root cuttings. And I'm still getting narcissus, but that's okay. We can squeeze this in here with no problem. So I'm guessing this is going to get, like I said, a 3 to 5 foot tall probably plant long term, and it'll fill in. I've really been impressed with a lot of the Arboretums. This, like I said, is our hot part of our border. So I don't know if you can see that intense orange on this. And one thing that really likes these are hummingbirds. So this is a popular section of our border. And I think maybe you can see the root ball on this. It's a little bit tight, so I'm just gonna get in here and break it up a bit. This isn't as critical as on a tree or a shrub, but this is a woody plant too, but I will do this. It will help things out. It'll help it root out into the surrounding soil instead of staying in its own little zone there. And this is not going to hurt it in the long run. So I've loosened that up pretty good here. And we'll fill this back in here. Push a narcissus bulb back in here too. That'll just give it a skirt in the spring. So I also have, I've done a relatively larger herbaceous plant, the peony, and then this semi-woody Arboretum towards the back. But I also have some ground covering plants in here that I'm going to add. Oops, I'm losing my mic, so just give me just a second here. Popping off my pocket here. So I have Back here, I have actually a chrysogonum. So this is a green and gold, and this is one Echo Lacquer Spider, and this is a super vigorous clone. We have literally made hundreds of these. If you came to our giveaway this year, you may have gotten some. We've also sold a bunch of them. So I'm only going to put one of these in because I think we started with these this year and we literally have hundreds of them. Super vigorous, great ground covering, early spring flowering. Primarily, though, it'll throw up flowers just about any time of the year. There are natives, and they're actually a little daisy. So I'm hoping to put this in here, and it'll kind of cover the ground, keep down some of my weeds here on this backside here. So, and my soil's not too bad here again, so I can literally get in here with my hand and dig. And I'm just loosening up that root ball, and you can see the stolons on this as it wants to go out in the spread. So we're going to stick this in here. And we'll get that one planted. So I have some other things. I'm not going to put them in the ground right now, but I've also laid out some ajuga. This is one that's grown for a bronzy foliage with some yellow and orange hues in it. But unfortunately, as I was putting it out here, it's like, darn, it has purple flowers or bluish flowers. I guess I want it for its foliage. The flowers are only in the spring. And I also put some Coreopsis, I think it's auriculata. Yes, auriculata nana. So it's a dwarf Coreopsis, which is another eastern native here. It only gets 6 or 8 inches tall. So another great low-growing plant, and it makes fairly dense clumps and does spread a little bit, but nothing aggressively, nothing like the chrysogonum or the ajugas. So, but I have those set out, and we'll get those later on. But I've gotten those first things planted. So what I'm going to do, actually, you could do these next 2 steps either the same time, or that is one before the other. But I like to, at this case, I'm going to do mulching next. So I got some of our good leaf mulch here, and I'm going to put that around the areas where I've just planted these plants. And this will keep down some of our winter weeds. You know, we have 4 seasons of weeds here in North Carolina for those who are not from here. You go from summer to the warm season weeds, which you have up north, and then we have our cool season weeds. And then there's the intermediate weeds and the bridge everything. So I just put a couple inches of mulch in here. Just nestle the plants in among that. So the next process, of course, is what we need to water things in. And since I'm doing this with a bucket, I'm not doing it with a hose right now, the mulch is actually quite beneficial. It'll help disperse the water so I don't erode out the soil I just settled in around the plants. So, but if you're using a hose, you might go ahead and do it beforehand. I'll get this abutyl one back here though before, so I don't forget it. But I'll come back and get some of this other stuff in here. But there's the basics of doing our fall planting. Perfect time of the year. A lot of these plants will root in really well through the cool seasons of the month, and they'll grow vigorously come spring. So another thing, of course, back to planting, is what do you do in the fall here or in winter, early winter? Great time for bulbs. They're in all the stores at this time of the year. Here's a few different ones that one of my coworkers actually picked up for her own garden, and she let me borrow because I don't have any on stock right now because we tend to get some later on in the season. But she picked out some tulips for her garden, some allium, and some narcissus. For me, tulips are a little bit iffy for us here. This is a late cultivar. The earlier flowering ones are a little bit better for us here in the south because they tend to get well established and leaf out before they decide to go dormant. They flower and go dormant before it gets too hot in the season. The later flowering ones want to hold a little bit longer than to perpetuate themselves anyways for long term. They tend to go dormant too early and don't reinvigorate themselves and last very long, but you can still get a nice display. But the other thing is with tulips are rabbit and squirrel and deer candy. So, but she did get something here. She got something else here, the alliums, which I think she got them. They're actually good color combinations that she got here. She got the pastel, they're double flowered tulips, and they're a collection of whites, pinks, and purples. But she also got some allium purple sensation, which you might try planting those together. A lot of times I have a friend, and some of you guys may know her, Bree Arthur of the Crazy Plant Lady. She likes to plant garlic around her beds to deter a lot of herbivory, both deer and rabbits and whatnot. So alliums, same genus, they have the same chemical in them. So this may, I won't guarantee, may help deter some of herbivory if you plant these together. It's worth a try anyways. I can't say for certain. Other thing you could do is, for here in the Southeast, you could grow these in containers. They'll keep at least the squirrel, or that is the rabbits getting to them, or even the deer if they're far enough away. Put them in among containers you have on your porch or deck, and just you can overplant them, say with pansies or whatnot with that. Well, the final thing she got some double flowered daffodils or narcissus, and this is just a blend, and excellent. Any narcissus for us here in the Southeast, nothing eats them, which is a wonderful thing. The only thing that will deter them over time is some cultivars like a lot more sun than we sometimes are able to give them, and they will dwindle away in that sense, or they are very vigorous and they make big clumps and don't flower. But you can always divide them, and that helps that, and you can always move them out of the shaded spots into the full sun. So you can work with that, but nothing will eat them, which is the great thing. These and hyacinths and galanthus, the snowdrops, for instance, are wonderful to use in your landscape because they are not eaten by our critters for the most part. So other bulbs you might find at this time of the year might be anemones, which I'm really been happy with some of the poppy flowered anemones, the anemone coronariums, which can be a little problematic when you plant them because you don't know what's up and down. So don't worry, just toss them in there. They will figure it out themselves. And the same way with these bulbs, you might not get them quite deep enough sometimes, or if you get them too deep, the plant will actually pull its bulb either up or down. They can do that to the appropriate level they want to be in the soil. So anyways, so that is another little project that you could be doing now. And we often plant our bulbs into the first of the year. So you have a couple months easy, probably 2 to 2.5 months of time now to do your planting now. And if you can't get done, you get your bulbs and you just don't have time to do it right now, you can hold them in a cool, dark place. It could be your refrigerator. Just don't put them with fruit. Do not store apples or pears or anything with them on that. The chemicals in them, or that is, they give off ethylene, which can actually be detrimental to the flower buds. So just don't store them with your anything like that. So if you are storing them for any amount of time before you get them planted. So my last thing here is I looked at, and I have a little cactus that I was given, I think it was this past Christmas by a friend of mine, you know, our holiday cactus, either Christmas or Thanksgiving cactus. I never know what to call them anymore. I don't know if this is a zygo cactus or a Schellenbergia or a hybrid of the two, but this is a white flowered one that I've had for a couple years now, and I torture it in my, actually in my window, but I just noticed that it was budding the other day. So if you have them, just take a look, see if your cacti are starting to come into flower or into bud. If you move them too late, sometimes they will drop their buds. But at this point, they are pretty easy to move around as long as you don't do any major temperature swings on them. They are a great plant to have, and they're great gifts. Another plant I have here, and this is one I've had for a couple years now as well. I got this during COVID. This is one of a couple or several orchids I've purchased over the last couple years. This is a lady slipper orchid. This is a Paphilopetalum. It's a tropical lady slipper. But these and Phalaenopsis, to induce flowering, if they've been slow to get them to flower, you can put them out when we have cool nights, not cold nights. You know, 40s and 50s are excellent. So we still have a few more weeks of this before we get real colds. It's your last chance to do it that way. But you can sometimes induce them to come into bud. And I managed to do it last year, but at the last minute on this one, my bud aborted because I think I had a change in temperature in my apartment is the only thing I can figure. But I'm going to try again this year. I have 2 really nice crowns on this that I think could actually set buds. So I'm going to keep an eye out for the next couple of months and see what happens. My Phalaenopsis, I brought them in. They had been out for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I've brought them in already, and I'm hoping to see if I get some new buds on them too. But for any of you growing orchids. And that kind of goes in with what Blake was saying about the upcoming houseplant program that Bryce Lane will be doing. So maybe he can fill you in a little bit more even than I can on these things. So I hope I've given you some ideas for what you might do this month. And do we have any questions?
Sure. First off, we got a couple of people were questioning sort of, I guess, how much light this site gets.
This is full sun.
This is full sun. Okay. And so we had some people asking, are you planting the Abutilon and the
Ajuga?
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, they're fine and dandy. These Ajuga actually are some newer ones, and they actually get much better foliage color in full sun. They have yellow and orange tones to them, and it really, I have some yellow ones that are on the shaded side of the garden, and they're just green because they are not getting enough light. So I think these should be fine here. We're going to test it and find out. If I kill them, I kill them. I have more of them, and they propagate very easily. The Butilons, I grow them in sun to half shade. They are not picky. They are great houseplants too. Wonderful plants to include in your border. For years, there used to actually be a clump of little imp in here, which is an Abutilon megapotamicum, but I have it in half shade in another location now, but it was fine and dandy in here, no problem. It just kind of got overwhelmed by some of its other neighbors in this section of the border. But I have other Abutilons that are getting full sun, actually kind of behind Lise, 70 feet behind her, but they're in full sun all afternoon and no problem. So.
Cool. Okay, so this next question isn't necessarily specific to November, but with this container here, I think it's worth talking about. They're asking, do you water the plants in the pots during the winter?
If it gets real dry, I will. Normally, it's like, I pray that we get some rain, because I don't always have time to do it. But yes, they're going to need far less water at this time of the, through the cool months. But just keep an eye on them. If you see anything starting to struggle, stick your hand in there. Oh, it might be too dry. Or if we've had excessive rain, you can also, if it's a pot that doesn't have a drainage hole in it, that can be another issue, and you'll start getting wilting. So just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, we do. I don't typically have to because we have consistent moisture, but if we go an extended amount of time, I will start watering them.
Cool. Somebody's asking about a plant that they, I guess, propagated recently in one of our plant propagation workshops. They say it's about a foot tall. They're asking, can they plant it outside now?
What is it?
Well, it's an Abutilon.
Oh, an Abutilon?
Yeah.
I mean, you could plant it out now. If you have multiples, maybe plant one out and keep the other in a pot and grow it through the winter as a house plant. They are perfectly adapted for houseplant culture. They used to be grown during the Victorian era as much like a spidistra, which I talked about, I think was that 2 weeks ago, as houseplants that were really tolerant. They were called parlor maples. So try that. I mean, or if you only have one, take a cutting off the top and stick the other one in the ground because it'll root really easily.
Okay. Somebody's asking with regards to this orchid. So are you saying to put orchids out in the fall weather?
Just over cool nights, not cold. When it's in the 40s and 50s at night, they're fine to be out. And that will often induce flowering on some of the orchids, specifically Paphilopetalums and Phalaenopsis. It will often work for. Some of the others it will too, but I don't know as much about them. I'm just starting to figure out these myself in my apartment. So if your house is just too warm constantly, they want a temperature change is the thing. And our homes are often too consistent, and that temperature change will often induce them into flowering.
Okay, so great.
So don't leave them out when it's in the 30s.
Yes.
But when it's in the mid to upper 40s like we've been having in 50s, no problem. We had 65 yesterday morning. Like
no kidding. Okay, so somebody's asking, I have some daffodils that are in too much shade and they're no longer blooming. Should I dig them up and transplant them now?
That's an excellent time. This time of the year is an excellent time if you can find them. If you know where they're at, do it. Or when they come up this winter, mark where they're at, say with a flag or something, that you want to move those later on once they start to die down, or through the winter, once they start to come up, move them. They probably won't flower this year, but if you get them out in the sun and they get reestablished, they'll reinvigorate them and you'll have a better chance of getting good flowering.
Okay. Someone's asking about an orange hot lava abutilon
Yep.
that they propagated earlier. It grew well, is now 2 feet tall. They're asking if they should not risk planting it in the ground now, but it sounds like now is
You
the
could do
perfect
it.
time.
You can take a cutting off the top and restart. That's one of the ones I was just saying is actually right behind Lise in reality. It's about this tall, and it's been flowering since April.
Okay. So they're asking at what low temperature do I need to pull it into the garage overnight?
For the abutilon or the orchids?
The abutilon.
If it's in a container, probably as long as we're above, it depends how big the container is, but I'd say as long as we're above freezing. If it's in a small container, especially. If you're in a big container, you can get away with a little bit more time down to the mid-20s. But if it's in the ground, you're not, the root system is insulated. That's the key thing, is have an insulated root system. And if you're gonna plant it, you might throw a good layer of mulch around the base of it if you're worried about losing it too. But like I said, take some cuttings off the top. It's not hard to root that one. And keep those inside. Just give it a little minor trimming and plant out the rest of it. And you might have more than you started with by spring.
Cool. Okay, this is a beautiful question, very close to my heart. They need to move a 40-year-old Japanese maple tree that's 4 feet tall.
Okay.
When's the best time to move it?
I would say wait until it goes totally dormant. Anywhere between December, January, February is a good time when they're dormant.
Okay.
If you're gonna try to move one that old. So, yeah. And get as big of a root ball as you can. It takes people. They'll get bigger than they have a bigger root ball than you expect. It's probably a weeping one is my guess. And we have one that was in it's in our laugh house now that Mark and I both thought I could carry in there by bare rooting. It had been in the same spot for about 30 years. 25, 30 years. And we decided not to after we realized that the root ball was 6 or 8 feet wide and about a foot deep or so, and you only weighed about 1,500 pounds. So we got some equipment to do that. So and it might take equipment depending if it's that big and that old. So if either have a lot of hands-on available or some equipment, have someone come in. You might take someone to do it. But yes, the cool, when it's dormant is a perfectly good time to move them. And they are actually quite resilient, Japanese maples. So, okay.
Beautiful. Okay, and I believe this is the last question. Somebody's asking about tulip bulbs in containers. Should they be outside or inside for the winter?
I would put them outside unless you have a refrigerator to chill them in. They like it cold. We don't get that cold here. So just put them out on your porch or deck. But if they're outside where the squirrels can get, you might cover them up with something to keep squirrels out because they will come in and dig them up. And planting something else on top of them is also often pretty good. It may deter them a little bit, but the squirrels, they like to dig, and they will sniff out those things. So it's discouraging sometimes when you come in the morning here and when they're actually flowering. We have a bunch of some of the species types that do very well here, the Clusianas and some of their hybrids, and you see the tops chopped off, and the squirrel had been there and he pulled the whole thing out and just threw the top away and has eaten the bulb. But yeah.
Okay, great. Well, that is all the questions we have in the chat, and I think that's all we have for today. So thank you so much, Tim, for putting on this talk for us, telling us about what all we can do in our garden this time of year. It's good stuff to know. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the midweek program. Please join us next week at 3 on Wednesday we're going to be having Mark do a talk entitled The Night Garden. Oh, and one other thing. We are looking ahead towards the future, thinking about what midweek programs we'd like to do in 2023. So if any of you out there have an idea for a topic for a midweek program that you'd like to have us cover, you can send us an email at jcraprograms@ncsu.edu and just let us know what you think, and who knows, maybe your dream could become a reality. With that, just thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Take care, y'all.